Hi, and welcome to this Fornav coffee break. My name is René Bloemel. I'm a product specialist at Fornav, and I will be your presenter today. As this coffee break is live, you can ask your questions via the GoToWebinar question window. We will answer them at the end of the coffee break. Today, we're going to explain how to build a faster Excel report with data from multiple tables. All Business Central reports, including Fornav reports, get data on a row-by-row principle. For most reports, this is fine. Sales documents, for instance, run on small and predictable dataset. Business Central deals with that by caching data. Once we get the larger datasets, this process can be cumbersome. Data is typically not cached, so we get a lot of round trips to the database. Let's say we want to build a price list where we want to display unit prices, inventory, and quantities on sales documents. If we get the data on a row-by-row basis, this report would be slow to run. A query object can speed the report up dramatically, but how do we get data from a query in a Fornav report? To demonstrate building a fast Excel report, I'm going to use these steps. The prerequisites, what do I need to get going? In step 2, I will create a query. In step 3, I will add a temporary table for my query. In step 4, I will build a new Excel report. Let's start with the first step. Today, I will be working on a Business Central on-premise server with a Business Central 2025 Wave 2 release. I've installed the Fornav customizable report pack, and I've executed the step-by-step wizard from the assisted setup to get started. I've also installed the Fornav Designer and Visual Studio Code with the AL language extension. Of course, everything I do today will also work in a cloud environment. The first thing we're going to do is create a query. The base object is going to be the price list line, and we will get all other relevant data from the tables connected to that. So just let's go have a quick look in Business Central to see what we're going to get. I am going to use a sales price list, which is a new feature in recent versions of Business Central. I've added a new price list called Coffee Break, and this price list has a bunch of items. And for these items, I would like a list with the inventory, the unit price, currency code, and the quantity on sales documents. So that's going to be data from the prices lines, data from the item table, data from the item ledger entries, and data from the sales lines. So quite a lot. To get that data, I have built a query called a PTE price list. The base data item for this query is going to be the price list line. From there, I'm going to link into the item. And for the item, I'm going to get the name and the inventory. The inventory is a flow field, but the query is going to deal with that in the underlying SQL query. And then, of course, I'm linking to the sales line where I'm going to get the document type and the quantity. And to run this, you can simply run the query on its own. I've published this into Business Central already. Looks I need to log in again. Once I logged in, you can see that I have my query, I have my price list, and I get the data from all of the price lists at the moment. There's a bunch of them inside Business Central. I have my product number, unit price. The currency is blank. That's not strange if you know Business Central, because the currency is a local currency. But it is blank right here, so we'll get back to that. Then we have the description, base unit of measure, the inventory gets calculated. And on the document type quote, I have 2, and on the document type order, I have 14. And what we also see here is that we have a bunch of quotes with a sales line quantity of 0. That's also a Business Central quirk, because the quote is the default value of the document type. So if we don't have anything in sales lines, we get the quote by default. Now, obviously, we can't use a query object in a report directly, not even in Fornav. So we're going to need to create an interface, and to do that, we will use a temporary table. The added benefit of using a table as an interface is that we can manipulate or enhance the query data. The local currency in Business Central, for instance, like we noticed, is always blank. And with our interface table, we can add the currency code from the general ledger setup. So back to Visual Studio. Let's look at the price list table. and I'll show this side by side with the query. And you can see that what I have added is a field in the table that matches all of the fields inside my query. And I've added an entry number, which is the primary key for the table, just so I don't get any warnings for double entries. So those are the basics. Then I've created a function called load from query, and this function does a couple of things. First of all, it gets the general ledger set up so I can get the local currency value. It deletes all of the records, and then I'm going to get the filters from the table, and the filters from the table are going to be set into the query. And that's a trick that we can use to set request filter fields on the report and pass those on into the query that we use. We're going to open and read the price list query, and in there most of it is just assigning the query values into the relevant table values. Only if the currency is empty, then we're going to use the general ledger setup code, and we notice that we have a lot of zero lines on the quotes. So we are going to say if sales line quantity is not zero, only then will we format the document type into my table. And that of course prevents me from having all of those query line, quote lines with zero. In this case, I'm going to have no document type if the quantity is zero. I'll do a rec insert, price list close, and the rec reset. And that's basically how you would get the data from a sales price into a table. Finally, we can start creating our Excel report in the Forknaf Designer. Now all I need to do is to link my query to use our interface table as the base table for the report and call the function that fills the table from the query. So let's go into the Forknaf Designer. I'm going to create a new report. Template is going to be an empty Excel template. It takes a little while to load. And for some reason, it always takes longer when you do coffee breaks. There we go. First thing we will do in the report properties is set the name. It's going to be PTE price list and the object number 5100 because that's the object range I've set in my extension. After that's done, I can add a data item. And the data item will of course be my PTE price list. Now it may be that if you just publish your extension that the PTE price list is not available in the Forknaf Designer yet. If so, just restart the Forknaf Designer. It will reload your objects. So I have my PTE price list data item, and on that I'm going to add my request filter fields because we've added those filters. Let's use them as well. So I'll add filter fields for the price list code and the product number. And then of course I need to tell Forknaf which fields to show in my Excel output. And to do that, I will select my fields. I'll grab the price list code, product number. I'll grab the currency and the unit price. I'll get the base unit of measure. Name, of course. I'll put that behind the product number. And finally, sales document type and sales line quantity. And of course, the inventory. Hit OK, and that's pretty much it. I can save my report, so I'm going to save it in my extension. Close it here. Now, one thing I've forgotten to do, which I can do in Forknaf, but I can just as well do it in here, is set my source table temporary. So use temporary is true. So do that, and then of course I need to load the data from my query. So I'm going to say PTE price list dot load from query, and that's all I need to do. Publish into Business Central. Let's hope this goes a bit faster. Yes. And we will see that in our My Reports, we now have the PTE price list, which I can run. I have my request filter fields. So I'll set this one to coffee break. And then we're going to send this to Excel document data and output, which means I get my PTE price list. Once I get rid of the license image, I can see that in here now I have my Athens desk. The currency is Great British Pounds, which is the default in the database that I'm using. And here on the quote I have 2, on the order I have 14. And you can see when the quantity on sales lines is 0, I don't get my line document type either. So I use the query to get fast results, and then I use a temporary table to manipulate the data and show the data in a way that customers want to see it. Let's recap what we just did. We found that using queries is a lot faster when we have large data sets. We cannot use queries directly in a 4nav report though. To use query data in a 4nav report, we have created an interface table and we wrote a function to load query data in the table. That also gives us more control over our query data. We can merge data from multiple queries or tables in our dataset. And finally, we created a new 4nav Excel report based on our interface table. All we needed to do to get the data was to call the load from query function in our table. The next step for this report will be to change the Excel formatting and add a pivot table. We've discussed that in an earlier coffee break, so you can watch that at your leisure. And as always, the code is available on GitHub. Just follow the link or the QR code. Thank you for listening to me so far. I can see we don't have any questions at the moment, so I will wrap up this coffee break. If you want to know more about 4nav, or if you want to download the 4nav toolbox, please visit our website. If you want to install 4nav in Business Central Cloud, please visit Microsoft AppSource. You can watch more videos about 4nav on our YouTube channel, and if you have any questions about 4nav, please email them to support@4nav.com. For a full list of upcoming and recorded coffee breaks, please visit 4nav.com/coffeebreak. And with that, thank you very much for joining me today, and goodbye.